Deep in America's heartland, where generations of farmers have worked the same soil for centuries, nature unleashed its fury one stormy night. Lightning struck the Mason family farm, and the earth itself seemed to shudder. By morning, an ancient well had cracked open, revealing something that would change everything. Inside lay a chamber that hadn't seen daylight for over 200 years, filled with artifacts that shouldn't exist, telling a story that was never meant to be found. As John Mason peers into the darkness, he doesn't realize that his discovery will draw more than just historians to his quiet farm. Some secrets were buried for a reason, and some treasures carry a price that can't be measured in gold. Could this mysterious well hiding beneath an ordinary farm hold the key to rewriting history as we know it? Tell us where you're watching from, and if this story intrigues you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. John Mason's weathered hands trembled as he held the flashlight beam steady over the cracked well opening. At 58, he'd spent his entire life on this land, just like his father before him, and his grandfather before that. But nothing. In 6 generations of farming had prepared him for what lay beneath his feet. "Sarah," he called out, his voice carrying across the misty morning air. "Sarah, bring the camera." Sarah Mason hurried from the farmhouse, her silver hair catching the dawn light. After 32 years of marriage, she knew every tone in her husband's voice. This one was different. "Good Lord," she whispered, kneeling beside the well. "John, are those markings carved into the stone?" They were. Beneath the splintered oak cover, strange symbols spiraled down the well's inner walls. Some seemed to shimmer in the flashlight's beam, despite the layer of grime coating them. "We need to get the deed," John said, suddenly standing up. "Dad's old deed to the property." Inside the farmhouse's study, John pulled out the family strongbox. Among the scattered papers and faded photographs lay the original land deed from 1802, its yellowed parchment carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. Sarah watched as her husband spread it across his desk, beneath the framed photo of his father standing proud before their first modern tractor. "There," John pointed, his finger trembling. "Look at the margins." Sarah leaned closer, adjusting her reading glasses. Surrounding the formal legal text were delicate annotations in faded brown ink. The handwriting was elegant but strange, unlike any script she'd seen before, and the symbols, they matched the ones in the well. "Your family," Sarah said slowly, "they never mentioned anything about these markings." John shook his head. "Dad was always traditional, kept everything exactly as his father had, said some things were better left alone." He paused, remembering. "Though there was that time, just before he passed, when he tried to tell me something. About the North Field, about the well. I was too busy worrying about the mortgage to really listen." The mortgage. Sarah felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Modern farming had changed everything. The small family farms around them had been swallowed up one by corporate agriculture. The Masons were one of the last holdouts, but the bills kept mounting. Last week's letter from the bank sat unopened on the kitchen counter, like a ticking time bomb. "Maybe," Sarah said carefully, "we should call someone about this. A historian or—" A deep rumble interrupted her, rolling across the land like distant thunder. But the storm had passed hours ago, and the morning sky was clear. Through the study window, they watched as a flock of crows erupted from the cornfield, their harsh cries echoing in the still air. "It's coming from the well," John said, already moving toward the door. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said, pulling the deed closer. "Look at this part, in the corner." In the margin's tight scroll, one phrase stood out clearly. "When thunder speaks from below, the time of revelation draws near. Guard well what lies beneath, for it guards us all." John and Sarah shared a look heavy with understanding. 6 generations of Masons hadn't just been farming this land, they'd been guarding it, and now whatever they'd been guarding was awakening. The rumble came again, stronger this time. On the wall, the photo of John's father trembled in its frame. Behind the glass, something caught Sarah's eye. She carefully removed the backing, and a small piece of paper fluttered to the desk. It was a note, written in his father's shaky hand. "To my son, when the well opens, remember, our family's true. Wealth was never in the soil we tilled, but in the secrets we kept. The deed holds the key. Trust in the signs. And John, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more. Some truths can only be learned when they're ready to be found." John stared at his father's last message, emotions warring across his face. Outside, another rumble shook the morning calm. Whatever lay beneath their farm was waiting to be discovered, and the Mason family legacy was about to take on a whole new meaning. Sarah squeezed her husband's hand. "Well," she said softly, "I guess we know what we have to do now." John nodded, carefully folding his father's note. "Yes," he said, looking out toward the well. "We have to understand what our family's been protecting all these years." He picked up the deed, its mysterious margins now seeming to pulse with hidden meaning. "And why they chose to protect it with their lives." The old well rope creaked ominously as John tested his weight against it. Sarah stood nearby, gripping a modern climbing harness they'd bought years ago for their son's rock climbing phase. Neither of them had mentioned Tommy, or the fact that he'd left farming for a tech job in Chicago. Some wounds were still too fresh. The fire department offered to send someone, Sarah reminded him, double-checking the harness straps. "This is Mason land," John replied simply. "Has to be a Mason who goes first." The morning sun had burned away the mist, revealing the true extent of the well's transformation. The lightning strike hadn't just cracked the cover, it had reshaped the entire opening, revealing an ancient stone archway that had been hidden within the ordinary well walls. "Testing, testing," John spoke into the walkie-talkie clipped to his jacket. "You reading me, Sarah?" Loud and clear, her voice crackled back through the handset she held. "Please be careful." John began his descent, the rope playing out slowly. Through the climbing gear, the familiar stone walls of the well soon gave way to something altogether different. The rough-hewn farm well transformed into worked stone blocks, each one carved with those strange symbols they'd noticed earlier. 20 feet down, the well opened into a chamber. John's flashlight beam caught glints of metal and glass among the shadows. "I'm seeing," he paused, adjusting his light. "Sarah, there's some kind of room down here. It's not natural." The chamber was roughly circular, about 15 feet across. Carved shelves lined the walls, holding objects that defied explanation. But what caught John's eye was a lantern, sitting on a stone pedestal in the center of the room. "There's a lantern down here," he reported. "Looks colonial era, maybe older, but Sarah..." He swallowed hard. "It's still burning." "What do you mean, still burning?" Sarah's voice crackled with static. "After all this time?" The lantern cast a steady golden glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the symbols carved into the walls. As John watched, the light shifted, taking on a blue tinge that reminded him of summer lightning. "I'm going to try to reach it," he said, swinging gently on the rope until he could plant his feet on solid ground. The chamber floor was dry, despite being below the water table, another impossibility to add to the growing list. The lantern stood, about waist-high on its pedestal. Up close, John could see it was made of blackened brass and clouded glass, its design unlike anything he'd seen in museums or antique shops. The light within danced and swirled, casting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "Got it," he said, carefully lifting the lantern. It was surprisingly warm to the touch. "I'm bringing it up." That's when he noticed the inscription on the pedestal where the lantern had sat. The same elegant script from the deed, but this time, in English, "Let there be light in dark places for those who are worthy to see." The lantern's glow suddenly intensified, illuminating the entire chamber. John gasped. The walls weren't just carved with symbols. They were covered in maps, diagrams, and what looked like scientific formulae, far beyond anything that should have existed in colonial America. "Sarah," He called into the walkie-talkie, his voice shaking. "Call Dr. Rivera at the university. Tell her we've found something that changes everything." The trip back up seemed to take forever, the lantern cradled carefully in one arm while he managed the rope with the other. When he finally emerged into the sunlight, Sarah was already on the phone, gesturing animatedly. "Yes, Dr. Rivera, as soon as you can. No, this isn't a hoax. Yes, we understand the implications." John set the lantern down on the well's rim. In daylight, its otherworldly glow was even more pronounced, the light within moving like liquid. Gold. A small panel on its base caught his attention. More of the strange script, but with numbers mixed in. Coordinates, maybe? Or a code? Sarah ended her call. "She's coming, bringing a whole team." She stared at the lantern, mesmerized by its shifting light. "John, what have we found?" Before he could answer, the lantern's light pulsed once, bright as a camera flash. In that instant, every symbol carved into the well stones blazed with the same golden light, creating a pattern that burned itself into their vision. A pattern that looked suspiciously like a star chart, but for stars that didn't exist in any sky they knew. The rumbling returned, deeper this time, and both Masons knew with certainty this was only the beginning. Dr. Elena Rivera arrived just before sunset, her university team's van kicking up dust along the farm's access road. She was younger than the Masons had expected, maybe 40, but her eyes held the sharp focus of someone who had spent a lifetime piecing together historical puzzles. "The lantern first," she said, barely taking time for introductions. When she saw it glowing on their kitchen table, she stopped dead in her tracks. "Impossible," she whispered, reaching for the artifact with trembling hands. "There's more," John said, spreading out the deed with its mysterious marginalia. "And the well chamber itself." "Wait." Dr. Rivera held up a hand, her attention caught by something on the lantern's base. "These markings, they're similar to manuscripts I've been studying. Manuscripts nobody's been able to translate." She looked up sharply. "Where's the rest of it?" Sarah and John exchanged glances. "The rest of what?" "The journal. These markings reference a journal. It should be—" She paused, closing her eyes in concentration. "Bound in leather worked by faithful hands, sealed with symbols of the 7 stars. John felt a chill run down his spine. In the chamber, he'd seen something like that, tucked away on one of the shelves. But before he could speak, a sound filled the kitchen, a harmonic tone emanating from the lantern, its light pulsing in rhythm. "It's responding to the words," Dr. Rivera breathed. "Quick, who has a camera? We need to document everything." As her team scrambled to set up equipment, John and Sarah described the chamber in detail. Dr. Rivera's excitement grew with each detail, but turned to visible shock when they mentioned the mathematical formulae on the walls. "Show me," she demanded. "Now." The sun had set by the time they reached the well, but the lantern's glow seemed stronger in the darkness. Dr. Rivera insisted on going down herself, despite John's protests. They watched as she disappeared into the chamber, her voice crackling over the walkie-talkie with exclamations in multiple languages. "Found it," she called up after 20 minutes. "The journal, it was exactly where—" "Oh my God!" "What is it?" Sarah called down. "This isn't just a journal. It's a codex. Multiple languages, some I've never seen before, and diagrams, technological schematics that shouldn't exist. Not in this time period. Not in any time period." When they pulled her up, Dr. Rivera clutched a leather-bound book to her chest. Its cover was worked with intricate designs, and 7 small silver stars were inlaid around its edges. The moment she set it near the lantern, both objects began to hum in harmony. "Look at this," she said, carefully opening the journal. The pages were filled with dense text in at least 5 different scripts, interspersed with detailed technical drawings. Some of this is 18th century English, some Latin, some I don't even know, but these diagrams— She traced one with a careful finger. This looks like an electrical circuit, but it's dated 1738. That's impossible. Sarah peered over her shoulder. Can you read any of it? Parts. This section here, Dr. Rivera pointed to a passage in English. The knowledge of the 7 stars must be protected, for there are those who would use it to break the seals of... She stopped, frowning. The next part switches to another language mid-sentence. John was about to respond when a news van turned onto their access road, its headlights cutting through the evening darkness. "Who called them?" Sarah demanded. Dr. Rivera looked guilty. "My department head must have. I had to tell him what we found. This is potentially the biggest historical discovery of the century." The lantern's light suddenly dimmed, and a chill wind swept across the farm. The journal's pages began to turn on their own, stopping at a page filled with red text. "Beware," Dr. Rivera translated slowly, "for knowledge shared too freely becomes a sword that cuts both ways." She looked up at the Masons, her academic excitement giving way to something like fear. "I don't think this was meant to be a public discovery." More headlights appeared on the road. The journal's pages rustled again, though there was no wind. Whatever secrets the Mason farm had been protecting for centuries, they were about to become very, very public. The news vans had barely set up their equipment when the first figures appeared at the edge of the cornfield, silent, watching. Their forms were barely visible in the gathering darkness, but John counted at least 5 of them. "Those aren't reporters," Sarah whispered, clutching the journal closer. Dr. Rivera was documenting the journal's contents with rapid-fire photographs when her camera suddenly failed. Then the news crew's lights went dark. One by one, every electrical device around the shut down, except for the ancient lantern, which burned brighter than ever. "Mason family," the voice carried across the farm with unnatural clarity. An elderly man emerged from the shadows, his silver hair catching the lantern's light. Behind him, others appeared. Men and women of the White Hawk tribe, dressed in ordinary clothes, but moving with ceremonial dignity. "Joseph White Hawk," John breathed, recognizing the tribal elder. "I haven't seen him since my father's funeral." Joseph approached slowly, his dark eyes fixed on the lantern. "We felt it awaken," he said simply. "The earth remembers what men forget." From beneath his jacket, he withdrew something that made Dr. Rivera gasp, a silver medallion, identical to one of the diagrams in the journal. Its surface caught the lantern's light and reflected it in impossible patterns. "Your family were not the only guardians," Joseph said, holding the medallion toward John. "For centuries, our peoples have watched over this place together, though your ancestors may not have told you the whole truth of it." The medallion's surface rippled like liquid silver, forming and reforming symbols that matched those in the well. Dr. Rivera fumbled for her backup camera, but Joseph raised his hand. "No recordings," he said firmly. "Some knowledge must be passed, down in the old ways, or its power becomes poison." A sound like distant drums began to pulse through the ground. The news crews backed away from their equipment as tendrils of blue lightning crawled across the metal surfaces. "The seals are weakening," a woman behind Joseph called out. "The barrier thins." Sarah stepped forward, still holding the journal. "What seals? What is all this?" Joseph's expression softened. "Your husband's family protected the physical place, but my people protected its meaning. The well is not just a chamber, it is a door. And now that door is opening." The drumming grew louder. Around the well, the carved symbols began to glow with the same otherworldly blue light they'd seen before. The medallion in Joseph's hand grew brighter in response, its surface now swirling with images of stars and cosmic patterns. "Long ago," Joseph continued, "when our peoples first met, we discovered we each held part of a greater truth. Your ancestors built the chamber to house knowledge from elsewhere. Our people knew the rituals to keep that knowledge safe. Together, we became its guardians." Dr. Rivera found her voice. "Knowledge from where? These technological schematics, The languages I've never seen. There are older sciences than yours, Professor, Joseph said quietly. Older truths, older ways of touching the stars. He held the medallion higher, and suddenly the night sky above the farm seemed to shift, revealing constellations that no telescope had ever seen. The news crews were backing away now, their cameras forgotten. The mysterious figures from the cornfield had drawn closer, forming a circle around the well. They began to chant in a language that made the air itself vibrate. "Choose quickly, John Mason," Joseph said, his voice taking on an urgent edge. The storm broke more than just the well cover. It broke ancient seals, and what was hidden is awakening. You must decide, will you help us restore the barriers, or will you let the modern world stumble blindly into mysteries it's not ready to understand? The medallion pulsed once, and every symbol on the well flared in response. Above them, the strange stars grew brighter, and for a moment, everyone present could see what the well truly was. Not just a chamber of secrets, but a junction point. Between worlds, John looked at Sarah, saw the same mix of fear and wonder in her eyes that he felt in his heart. Their family had been guardians for generations without knowing the full truth. Now that truth was bursting into the open, bringing with it responsibilities and dangers they were only beginning to understand. The choice, as Joseph had said, was theirs. But as the power beneath their farm continued to awaken, that choice was rapidly slipping away. Dawn found the Mason farm transformed. White research tents dotted the north field, and a mix of tribal elders and university scientists huddled over makeshift tables, comparing notes in hushed voices. The news vans had withdrawn to the main road after their equipment failures, maintaining an uneasy distance. John stood at the well's edge, with Dr. Rivera and Joseph Whitehawk, watching as a ground-penetrating radar unit slowly mapped the earth beneath their feet. The operator, a geologist named Dr. Chen, stared at his screen with increasing disbelief. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting settings. "The tunnels, they're everywhere, like a web under the entire property." Sarah emerged from the house carrying the lantern, which had refused to extinguish despite all attempts. As she approached, its light pulsed, and the radar screen flickered in response. "There," Dr. Chen pointed. "That pulse just revealed another layer. These aren't natural formations. They're constructed chambers, perfectly preserved. But the depth. Some of these should have collapsed centuries ago." Joseph reached into his leather bag and withdrew a rolled parchment, brittle with age. "Perhaps this will help explain." He carefully unrolled what appeared to be a map, its surface covered with the now familiar symbols and precise geometric patterns. "This has been passed down through generations of my people's knowledge keepers." Dr. Rivera leaned in, her eyes widening. "These markings match the journal exactly, and look," she pointed to a series of concentric circles. "This is a map of the tunnel system. But the date, 1729? Before the official founding of the colony," Joseph confirmed. "Before your histories say such things were possible." The map was a masterwork of precision and detail, showing not just tunnels, but chambers, water systems, and what appeared to be power conduits, though that should have been impossible for the time period. At its center, directly under the Mason farm, was an intricate pattern of intersecting lines that seemed to move when viewed from different angles. "The heart of the maze," Joseph said softly, "where earth and sky meet." Dr. Chen's radar unit emitted a sharp tone. On his screen, something large and geometrically perfect appeared beneath the well chamber. That's a sphere," he said incredulously. "A perfect sphere, 30 feet in diameter, about 60 feet down." The lantern's light suddenly intensified, and the map in Joseph's hands began to glow with the same golden radiance. Symbols hidden in the parchment revealed themselves, star charts, equations, and diagrams that seemed to fold in on themselves in impossible ways. "It's not just a map," Dr. Rivera breathed. "It's a key. These tunnels form some kind of pattern, a machine built into the earth itself." Sarah touched one of the glowing lines. "Look at the date notations. They didn't build this, they found it. The colonists and the tribal people, they discovered it together and chose to protect it," John added, understanding dawning. "That's why this land was granted to my family. Not for farming, but for watching," Joseph finished. "For guarding until the appointed time." He traced the pattern at the map's center. "Your well is just one door. There are others, scattered across the old territories. But this one leads to the heart." A deep resonance began to build, like the sound of a massive bell ringing beneath the earth. The radar screen filled with interference, and Dr. Chen scrambled to save his data. In the distance, the tribal elders began chanting again, their voices harmonizing with the subterranean tone. "The barriers continue to weaken," Joseph warned. "What was hidden is rising. We must—" He was interrupted by the arrival of a black SUV with government plates. Men in dark suits emerged, led by a woman whose bearing suggested authority and whose eyes showed she knew exactly what she was looking at. "Dr. Rivera," she called out, striding toward them. "I'm Dr. Helen Carter, Department of Energy, when your findings crossed my desk." She paused, taking in the glowing map and the assembled group. "Well, let's just say certain patterns were recognized. Patterns we've seen before." The lantern's light dimmed slightly, and the map's glow faded. Joseph carefully rolled it up, his expression guarded. "The government has its own watchers, it seems. We've been tracking anomalies like this for decades," Dr. Carter admitted. "But never one so complete. Never with the original guides still intact." She looked at John and Sarah. "Your family has been sitting on something extraordinary, Mr. Mason. Something that could change our understanding of everything." The resonance from below grew stronger, and small stones near the well began to vibrate. Whatever lay in that perfect sphere beneath their feet, it was awakening. And now the whole world was watching. The descent into the sphere chamber took 3 hours of careful preparation. Dr. Carter's team brought state-of-the-art climbing gear and monitoring equipment, while Joseph's people insisted on performing protective rituals at each stage of the journey. John insisted on being part of the first exploration team, a right no one dared challenge. The tunnel leading to the sphere was different from the well shaft. Its walls were perfectly smooth, almost glassy, with geometric patterns that seemed to capture and redirect the lantern's light. Dr. Rivera ran her hands over the surface, shaking her head in wonder. "This material, it's not stone, not metal, not ceramic. It's something else entirely." They reached the sphere chamber in silence, each person absorbed in their own thoughts about what they might find. The lantern's light revealed a sight that drew gasps from even the most seasoned scientists. The sphere hung suspended in the center of a vast circular room, floating without visible support. Its surface was covered in intricate bronze-colored designs that shifted and moved like liquid metal. At its base sat what appeared to be a control panel, a bronze device covered in familiar symbols. "My God," Dr. Carter whispered, her professional demeanor cracking. "It's identical to the Arizona site. And the ones in the old country," Joseph added quietly. "The patterns are all connected. Dr. Chen's instruments were going haywire. The energy readings are off the scale. Whatever this is, it's not just ancient, it's active." John approached the bronze device, drawn by something he couldn't explain. The symbols on its surface reminded him of the deeds marginalia, of the journal's diagrams, of every strange marking he'd seen since the well cracked open. But these weren't just symbols, they were moving, rearranging themselves like living things. "Don't touch it," Dr. Carter called out, but her warning came too late. John's hand brushed the device's surface, and the chamber exploded with light. The sphere began to rotate, its patterns flowing faster, and a holographic display burst into existence around them. Stars, galaxies, and mathematical formulae filled the air, but not like any star map they knew. "It's a navigation system," Dr. Rivera breathed, her camera forgotten in her hand. But for traveling, where? The bronze device hummed to life under John's touch. Parts of it began to unfold like a mechanical flower, revealing crystalline components and pulsing energy conduits. The symbols reformed into recognizable text in multiple languages, including modern English. The Nexus Point Control Module, Dr. Rivera translated, gateway to the Seven Stars Network, established in the time before time by the... She frowned. That word doesn't translate. But look at these equations. They're describing principles of physics we're only now beginning to understand. Joseph stepped forward, holding out the medallion. Its surface had begun to mirror the sphere's patterns. Our stories speak of the star people who came before, who built doorways between worlds. They chose our ancestors, both our peoples, to guard their secrets until humanity was ready to understand. Ready to understand what? Sarah asked, her voice tight with tension. As if in response, the holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a map of interconnected sites across the Earth. Dozens of points lit up, each corresponding to places where similar discoveries had been made or where legends spoke of mysterious powers. It's a network, Dr. Carter said, her voice filled with professional excitement. A prehistoric global network of transportation hubs, research, stations. We've found fragments before, but never a functional control center. The bronze device suddenly projected a series of images: ancient civilizations, advanced technologies, celestial events. But these weren't historical records. They were instructions. Look at the power readings, Dr. Chen called out, checking. His instruments. They're building towards some kind of... The sphere pulsed once, and every piece of modern technology in the chamber went dead. Only the lantern and the bronze device remained active, their light combining to cast strange shadows. On the chamber walls, "John," Sarah said softly, pointing to the device. New text was forming on its surface. "The time of awakening approaches. The seals weaken as ordained. Guardians must choose, maintain the barriers or begin the integration." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of ancient machinery coming to life after centuries of sleep. Whatever choice lay before them, it was clearly larger than just the Mason farm. They were standing at a crossroads of history, science, and something that might be beyond both. And somewhere above them, through layers of earth and secrets, the world was waiting for answers they weren't sure they were ready to give. The black helicopter appeared just before noon, descending onto the Masons' east field with precision that spoke of both wealth and authority. Augustus Vale stepped out in an immaculate three-piece suit that seemed to repel the farm dust itself. His reputation preceded him. Billionaire industrialist, private collector of archaeological anomalies, and a man who usually got what he wanted. "The government has no right to quarantine this discovery," Vale announced without preamble, striding toward the research tents. "Private property laws are quite clear, Mr. Mason. Everything here belongs to you, and could belong to my foundation, for the right price." John felt Sarah tense beside him. The bank's latest notice was still sitting unopened on their kitchen counter. Vale's timing wasn't coincidental. "Mr. Vale," Dr. Carter stepped forward. "This site is now under federal protection, a protection that could take years to legally enforce." Vale smiled, reaching into his briefcase. "Whereas I'm prepared to offer the Mason family $50 million right now." He produced a document and a small wooden box. "I've been tracking similar sites for decades. The patterns, the energy signatures. I know what we're dealing with here, and I believe I have something that belongs to your collection." The box opened to reveal a gold seal, its surface etched with familiar symbols. The moment it was exposed to air, the lantern's light pulsed, and the bronze device in the sphere chamber below sent a resonance through the ground that everyone felt. Joseph Whitehawk moved forward, his eyes fixed on the seal. "Where did you get that?" "Vienna auction 1967, part of a noble family's estate sale." The Habsburg connection to all this is fascinating, don't you think? Vale held up the seal. 1 of 7, if the legends are true. Each marking corresponds to a star in the— "Put it away," Joseph interrupted sharply. "Those seals were separated for a reason." But Vale was already moving toward the well, holding the seal out. The symbols on its surface began to glow, matching the patterns they'd seen in the sphere chamber. "Think about it, Mr. Mason. With proper private funding, we could unlock these secrets in months instead of years. No government bureaucracy, no academic committees, just pure discovery." Dr. Rivera was staring at the seal with professional fascination. The craftsmanship. It looks almost modern, but the metallurgical analysis must date it to— "Oh, it's much older than you think," Vale smiled. "Carbon dating proves useless. Like everything else we've found at similar sites, it seems to exist outside of normal temporal constraints." The seal's glow intensified, and the ground trembled again. From the research tents, Dr. Chen called out in alarm. "The sphere's energy readings are spiking." "You see," Vale's eyes gleamed. "It recognizes its purpose. The seals aren't just artifacts. They're keys, parts of a system waiting to be reactivated. And I have the resources to help you understand it all." Sarah stepped forward. "And what happens when it's reactivated?" "Progress, Mrs. Mason. Advancement. Knowledge that could transform human civilization." He held out the contract. "All I need is your signature." John looked at the paper, then at the seal glowing in Vale's hand. The symbols seemed to writhe more urgently now, as if trying to convey a warning. He thought of his father's note. "Some truths can only be learned when they're ready to be found. The choice isn't yours to make," Joseph said quietly. "None of us here are owners, only guardians." Vale's smile hardened. "Guardians of what? A technological heritage that could solve humanity's greatest challenges? You would keep that hidden because of tribal superstition?" The seal pulsed. Once more, and suddenly every piece of electronic equipment in the area went dead, including Vale's helicopter. In the silence that followed, they could hear a deep thrumming from the sphere chamber below, like a massive machine powering up. "Mr. Vale," John said finally, "I think it's time for you to leave." "Think about what you're turning down," Vale persisted. "The money, the opportunities, your family's legacy could be so much more." "Our legacy," Sarah replied, "is knowing when to protect something bigger than ourselves." Vale's expression turned calculating. "The government can't guard this site forever, and there are other ways to acquire property." He placed the seal back in its box. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." As his security team arranged for a new helicopter, Vale paused. "The seals will be reunited, Mr. Mason. The only question is whether your family will benefit from it." They watched the billionaire leave, but the tension remained. The seal's brief presence had awakened something in the sphere chamber, something that was still building power beneath their feet. And Vale's resources meant this wouldn't be his last attempt to gain control. "He'll be back," Dr. Carter said grimly. "Men like that always are." The lantern's light flickered, casting shadows that seemed to point toward the well. Whatever secret lay below, it was clear that more than just local history was at stake now. The race to uncover the truth, or keep it hidden, was just beginning. After Vale's departure, Joseph called for a council. As the sun set, tribal elders gathered in the Mason's barn, transformed by flickering lantern light and sweet sage smoke. They brought with them something that made Dr. Rivera catch her breath, a ceremonial pipe carved from red stone, its surface bearing the same symbols they'd seen in the sphere chamber. "This pipe," Joseph explained, handling it with reverence, "has been passed down through 15 generations of wisdom keepers. It was given to our people by those who came before as a means of communicating with the star nations." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "Communicating? How?" "Not through words." A female elder named Mary Whitehawk spoke up. "Through visions. Through the smoke that bridges worlds." She touched the pipe's stem. The stone itself came from their vessels. The lantern's light seemed drawn to the pipe, creating shifting patterns across its carved surface. John recognized star charts, similar to those in the sphere chamber, but arranged differently, showing constellations as they would have appeared thousands of years ago. "Your instruments detect energy," Joseph said, nodding to Dr. Chen's equipment. "Our pipe reveals purpose. Together, they tell a complete story." He began the ceremonial preparation, each movement precise and practiced. The elders formed a circle, with the masons and scientists included as witnesses. When the pipe was lit, the smoke didn't behave like ordinary smoke. It formed distinct shapes, geometric patterns that matched the symbols on the well walls. Mary began to sing in her native tongue, a melody that seemed to harmonize with the sphere's distant humming. The smoke swirled faster, and suddenly everyone present saw what the pipe was showing them. Visions of great ships descending from the stars, of knowledge being shared, of a network of sites being created across the earth. They came as teachers, Joseph narrated, not conquerors. They saw potential in our world, but knew we needed time to develop wisdom alongside knowledge. The sites they built were meant to be discovered gradually, as humanity proved ready for each new truth. The smoke shifted, showing scenes of cooperation between colonial settlers and native peoples, the first guardians choosing to protect something greater than their differences. John saw his own ancestors among them, working with Joseph's people to hide and preserve the sites. The seals were created as keys, Mary continued, but also as tests, 7 seals for 7 stars, each revealing its knowledge only when the right questions were asked. Not how can we use this power, but how can we prove worthy of it? The pipe's smoke now showed darker visions, the consequences of power discovered too soon, of knowledge without wisdom. The images were clear enough to make several witnesses turn away. "This is why the sites were hidden," Joseph said softly. "Why the network was disconnected. Humanity's potential for growth is matched only by its potential for destruction." Dr. Rivera, who had been taking notes, suddenly stopped writing. "The journal entries about breaking the seals, they're not just about physical locks, are they? They're about breaking the stages of revelation before we're ready, like opening a cocoon before the butterfly is formed," Mary nodded. "Vale doesn't understand. His desire to force the sites to reveal their secrets, it goes against their very purpose." The smoke patterns shifted one final time, showing the sphere chamber's activation sequence. But unlike Vale's forceful approach, this version showed a gradual awakening, a harmonious integration of ancient knowledge with modern understanding. "The choice before us isn't just about protecting or revealing," Joseph concluded. "It's about timing, about wisdom." He turned to John and Sarah. "Your family was chosen not just for their ability to keep secrets, but for their ability to know when secrets should be shared." Sarah touched the pipe's surface gently. "But how do we know when the time is right?" The smoke coalesced into a final image. The Mason farm transformed into something between a research center and a sacred site, where science and spiritual wisdom worked together to understand the Star People's legacy. "We will know," Mary smiled, "because we will face it together, as the first guardians did." The pipe's smoke finally dispersed, but the visions it revealed left a lasting impact. The scientists looked at their instruments differently now, seeing beyond raw data to deeper meanings. The barrier between ancient wisdom and modern knowledge felt thinner, more permeable. As the ceremony concluded, a new sound emerged from the sphere chamber, a harmonic tone that matched the frequency of Mary's song perfectly. The Star People's technology, it seemed, recognized the truth in older ways of knowing. But even as understanding grew among those present, lights appeared on the horizon. More news vans, more government vehicles, more of Vale's people. The modern world was closing in, ready or not, and time was running out for choosing the right path forward. The attack came at midnight, Professional, coordinated, and nearly silent. If the sphere's energy hadn't interfered with their night vision equipment, they might have succeeded. As it was, the first sign of trouble was a guard's shout, followed by the distinctive red dots of laser sights dancing across the research tents. "Get down!" Dr. Carter yelled, her government training showing as she drew a concealed weapon. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, creating a defensive perimeter around the well entrance. John and Sarah huddled behind equipment cases with Dr. Rivera, while Joseph and the tribal elders melted into the darkness, moving with unexpected stealth. The lantern, which Sarah clutched tightly, dimmed of its own accord. "Vale's people?" Sarah whispered. "Too crude for Vale." Dr. Carter called back softly. "These are fortune hunters. Someone leaked word about artifacts worth millions." A black-clad figure appeared suddenly at the well's edge, preparing to descend. Before anyone could react, a deep thrumming arose from below, and a pulse of energy sent the intruder staggering backward. In that moment, something caught the lantern's light, a black iron box half hidden in the infiltrator's pack. "They have one of the containers," Joseph's voice came from the darkness. "From the Pennsylvania site." Dr. Carter's expression hardened. "The missing artifacts from the museum break-in last month. These aren't just thieves, they're part of the international antiquities black market." The squad leader's voice cut through the night. "We only want the seal components. Give them up. Nobody gets hurt. Fight back." A single shot fired into the air. Well, farm accidents happen all the time. John felt the ground tremor beneath him. The sphere was reacting to something. Either the threat of violence or the presence of the black iron box. Dr. Chen's monitoring equipment began emitting urgent beeps. "Energy readings are going critical," he hissed from behind his laptop. "The sphere's defensive systems are activating." The lantern suddenly blazed to full brightness, revealing a dozen armed figures surrounding the site. But it also illuminated something else. Tribal members emerging from the shadows, carrying ceremonial staffs that now hummed with the same energy as the sphere. "Last warning," the squad leader called. "We know what's down there. Our employer wants the complete set of seals and—" His words cut off as the black iron box in his companion's pack began to vibrate violently. Its surface, previously dark and unremarkable, now crawled with illuminated warnings in the same script they'd seen throughout the site. "Put it down!" Joseph shouted. "That container was sealed for a reason." Too late. The box burst open, releasing a swirling darkness that seemed to absorb all light, except for the symbols etched into its inner surface. Dr. Rivera gasped as she translated the now glowing text. "Herein lies bound the shadow of understanding, the price of knowledge sought too soon." The darkness took shape, forming into something that defied description, a manifestation of void that moved with terrible purpose. The armed intruders began firing wildly, their bullets passing harmlessly through the apparition. "The box was a prison," Mary Whitehawk's voice rang out. "A warning left by the Star People. Some forces must remain bound until their time." The tribal elders raised their staffs in unison, beginning a chant that resonated with the sphere's frequency. The lantern's light formed a barrier, holding the darkness at bay. But it was the bronze device from below that responded most dramatically, sending a beam of pure energy upward through the well shaft. The light struck the dark manifestation, and reality itself seemed to bend. Images flashed in everyone's minds. Star maps, mathematical equations, and terrible visions of what could happen if the site's power was misused. The armed intruders fled in panic, leaving behind their equipment and the now empty black iron box. As the elders' chant reached a crescendo, the darkness was drawn back into the container, which sealed itself with a final pulse of energy. When silence returned, Joseph approached the box carefully. This is why the seals were separated. Why? The knowledge was hidden. Power calls to power, and not all who seek it understand its weight. Dr. Carter holstered her weapon, looking shaken. That That wasn't in any of our briefings about these sites. Because some truths can't be contained in reports, Mary said softly. They must be experienced to be understood. John picked up the black iron box, feeling its cold surface pulse with residual energy. The warning symbols still glowed faintly, a reminder of what they were dealing with. We need better security, he said. Not just guards and guns. Something that understands what we're protecting. Sarah looked thoughtful. Maybe that's why all this is happening now. Not just because the time is right, but because all the right guardians are finally in place. Science, spirituality, history, all working together. The lantern's light steadied, and the sphere's energy subsided to its normal hum. But everyone present knew this was just the beginning. Word of the site's power would spread, drawing others who sought to claim it by force. They had survived this attack, but as the black iron box's warning showed, there were darker forces gathering. Forces that wouldn't be stopped by conventional weapons or ordinary defenses. The race to understand the Star People's legacy had become a race to protect it from those who would unleash powers they couldn't possibly control. Dawn found Dr. Rivera and Dr. Chen huddled over a makeshift laboratory table in the barn, their excitement palpable. Before them lay their newest discovery, a crystalline formation extracted from the sphere chamber's wall, its structure unlike anything they'd ever studied. The molecular arrangement shouldn't be possible, Dr. Chen muttered, adjusting his microscope. It's not just the crystal lattice, it's what's inside it. The patterns are moving. Dr. Rivera looked up from the journal's technical diagrams. According to these notes, it's not just a crystal, it's a data storage device. Sarah brought them coffee, pausing to study the crystal herself. In the morning light, its surface seemed to ripple with stored information, like a liquid computer. Made solid. Watch this, Dr. Chen said, bringing the lantern closer. The crystal's internal patterns immediately responded, reorganizing themselves into recognizable symbols. It's interfacing with the other artifacts. They're all part of one integrated system. Dr. Carter burst into the barn, her usual composure. Shaken by excitement, the Pentagon's preliminary analysis just came in. The energy signature from these crystals matches signals we've been detecting from deep space. Specifically, she paused, letting the implications sink in, from the direction of the 7 stars mentioned in the ancient texts. The crystal pulsed, and suddenly the air above it filled with holographic data, star charts, mathematical equations, and something that made Dr. Rivera grab for her notebook. It's a primer, she breathed, like the Rosetta Stone, but for their entire scientific knowledge base. Look, basic mathematics evolving into advanced physics. They weren't just leaving us technology, they were teaching us how to understand it. Dr. Chen's instruments began registering new energy patterns. The crystal's processing power, it's beyond quantum computing. Every facet appears to operate in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be a technical manual for the sphere chamber. Equations resolved themselves into engineering diagrams, revealing the true purpose of the underground network. It's not just a transportation system, Dr. Carter said, studying the schematics. It's an educational system. Each site was designed to activate sequentially, teaching fundamental principles before revealing more advanced concepts. Joseph entered quietly, watching the dancing lights above the crystal. Our stories speak of this. The Star People said they would return when we learned to read their signs properly, not just with science, but with wisdom. The crystal's display flickered, and new information appeared, images of similar sites around the world, many still undiscovered. Each one contained its own crystal database, its own piece of the larger puzzle. Look at these dates. Dr. Rivera pointed to a timeline materializing before them. Some of these sites were built thousands of years before our recorded history begins, but others, she frowned, others show construction dates in our future. Not construction dates, Dr. Chen corrected, checking readings on his tablet. Activation. Dates. The entire network is on a timed release schedule. Each site awakening when the surrounding civilization reaches the right level of development. The crystal suddenly emitted a high-pitched tone, and its internal patterns realigned themselves. Above it, a new message formed in multiple languages. Coordination. Achieved. Philadelphia site now online. Beginning synchronization. Dr. Carter's phone buzzed. "The museum break-in," she said after answering. "That black iron box we recovered. Its counterpart in Philadelphia just activated. The sites are talking to each other." The holographic display expanded, showing energy. Connections forming between multiple locations across the globe. Each active site appeared as a point of light, with the Mason farm pulsing at a key intersection. "It's a teaching network," Dr. Rivera said wonderingly. "The most advanced concepts can only be understood when multiple sites share data. They built redundancy into the system. No single location holds all the knowledge. Which is why Vale's approach would never work," Sarah added. "You can't force understanding by collecting artifacts. The sites have to be discovered naturally, worked with cooperatively." The crystal's light intensified, and new data began streaming through the holographic display. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as he translated the information. "This is incredible. Medical knowledge, clean energy technology, sustainable agriculture techniques. But it's all locked behind educational gates. You have to prove understanding of basic principles before accessing more advanced concepts." "Like a cosmic driver's license test," Sarah said with a small smile, "proving we're responsible enough for the next level." The crystal's display shifted one final time, showing a message that made everyone present fall silent. Phase 1. Evaluation. Beginning. Humanity's response to initial revelations will determine timing of next activation. They were being tested, Dr. Rivera realized. Everything that had happened since the storm, the well's opening, the sphere's discovery, even the attack, was part of the evaluation. How they handled these first revelations would decide when they received the next ones. The crystal pulsed once more, and in its depths they could see reflections of the 7 stars waiting to share their knowledge, when humanity proved ready to receive it. The sphere chamber felt different now. What had been mysterious was becoming comprehensible, though no less awesome. John and Sarah stood with Joseph before the bronze device, while Dr. Carter consulted quietly with her superiors in Washington. The crystal's revelations had forced everyone to make decisions they'd never anticipated. Mary Whitehawk approached, carrying something wrapped in ceremonial cloth, an ancient scroll that seemed to hum in harmony with the sphere's energy. "This was kept separate from the other artifacts," she explained, carefully unrolling it, "because it speaks not of how the sites work, but of why they were created, and more importantly, why they were hidden." The scroll's surface was unlike any material they'd seen, simultaneously ancient and pristine. As Mary unrolled it, symbols began to glow, just like those in the sphere chamber. "It's a message," Dr. Rivera translated, "written in multiple forms for multiple ages, a warning but also a promise." The scroll's text shifted, adapting to their understanding. "To those who find this legacy, you stand at a crossroads. The knowledge we offer can lift your world from darkness or cast it into deeper shadow. The choice of path must be made freely with full understanding of its weight." John thought of Vale's offer, of the armed intruders, of all who would try to force this knowledge before its time. What happens if we make the wrong choice? The scroll's surface rippled, and new text appeared. The network can be awakened in 2 ways. Through gradual understanding, letting each truth take root before the next is revealed, or through forced activation, demanding all knowledge at once. The first path leads to integration. The second, the text changed to show mathematical equations, describing cascading system failures, chain reactions of technological awakening too fast for any civilization to handle. Vale's approach wouldn't just be dangerous, Dr. Rivera said quietly. It would be catastrophic. Forcing all sites to activate simultaneously would unlock knowledge we're not ready to handle. Dr. Carter finished, rejoining them. Washington's analysts agree we need controlled development, not a technological gold rush. Sarah touched the scroll gently. So what's the right path? The answer appeared in glowing text. The guardians must choose, maintain the sacred trust, guiding understanding at wisdom's pace, or step aside, letting others advance knowledge without restraint. Joseph nodded gravely. As it was in the beginning, the Star People gave our ancestors the same choice, to watch and protect, or to use and risk. The scroll's final message formed slowly. Know that your choice binds not just your time, but generations to come. The path of wisdom is long, but its rewards transform worlds. Choose well, guardians of the threshold. John looked at Sarah, seeing his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. They thought of their farm, of generations of masons protecting something they didn't fully understand, of their son Tommy, who might one day need to carry this legacy forward in a world transformed by these revelations. If we choose to maintain the trust, Sarah asked, what does that mean exactly? Mary gestured to the scroll. It means becoming teachers as well as guardians, working with the sites as they were meant to be used, as tools for gradual enlightenment, not weapons or shortcuts to power. The government will help, Dr. Carter added, but not control. We've seen enough to know this has to be a cooperative effort between all traditions. The sphere's hum deepened, as if responding to their discussion. On the scroll, a final line of text appeared. Speak your choice with clear hearts. The network awaits your decision. John took Sarah's hand, thinking of all that had happened since the storm, of ancient wisdom and modern science finding common ground, of the responsibility they'd inherited and the future they would help shape. The choice, when it came, felt both momentous and natural, like planting seeds in spring, knowing they would feed generations to come. We choose to guard and guide, John said firmly, as our ancestors did, as our children will. The scroll blazed with light, its message clear. The choice is witnessed. Let the true awakening begin. Around them, the sphere chamber's energy shifted, feeling less alien, more in harmony with the world above. The path ahead would be long and challenging, but they had chosen it freely, with full understanding of its weight. The age of guided awakening had begun. The collision of forces came sooner than anyone expected. Vale's helicopters appeared first, followed by a convoy of unmarked vehicles that Dr. Carter identified as belonging to various private military contractors. But it was the last arrival that caused the most concern, a mobile drilling platform being towed into position near the farm's eastern boundary. They're going to try to bore directly into the sphere chamber, Dr. Chen said, checking his surveillance equipment. They must have gotten detailed scans somehow. They have, Dr. Carter confirmed grimly. Our security was compromised. Someone sold Vale the complete geological survey data. But as the massive drill began to move into position, something unexpected happened. A previously hidden chamber in the sphere room opened, revealing a massive statue that none of their explorations had detected. It stood 9 feet tall, humanoid but clearly not human, crafted from a metal that matched no known element. The statue's surface began to ripple with familiar symbols, and the lantern's light pulsed in response. Dr. Rivera rushed to translate. The emerging text. The guardian awakens when patience fails, and force threatens wisdom's path. Vale's voice boomed across the farm through a powerful speaker system. You've made your choice, Mason. Now I'm making mine. That knowledge doesn't belong to any one group. It belongs to humanity, and I'm going to ensure everyone has access to it. Access without understanding, Joseph said quietly, is worse than no access at all. The drilling platform's engines roared to life, But they weren't the only things. Awakening. The Guardian statue's eyes began to glow with the same energy they'd seen in the sphere, and its metal surface transformed from solid to liquid, and back again. "My God," Dr. Carter breathed. "It's some kind of automated defense system." The statue raised one fluid metal arm, and every piece of electronic equipment in Vale's convoy suddenly went dead. The drilling platform's engines died mid-roar, and the helicopter's rotors froze. Vale's security forces responded with gunfire, but the bullets passed through the statue's liquid metal form harmlessly. Its other arm rose, and a pulse of energy swept across the farm. Everyone fell to their knees, as reality itself seemed to bend. When they could see clearly again, the scene had transformed. The Guardian statue now stood in the open, having somehow phased through solid earth to reach the surface. Around its feet, the ground had transformed into the same liquid metal as its body, spreading in a growing circle. "It's not just defending," Dr. Rivera called out, translating rapidly as new text appeared across the statue's surface. "It's revealing, showing everyone present exactly what they're dealing with." The liquid metal ground began projecting images into the air, scenes of civilizations rising and falling, of knowledge gained too quickly leading to destruction, of the Star People's careful plans for humanity's gradual development. Vale's voice had lost its confidence. "Stop this! Whatever you're doing, stop it now!" "We're not doing anything," John shouted back. "This is what the site does when attacked. This is why our ancestors chose to protect rather than exploit." The Guardian statue's form shifted again, becoming a mirror that reflected not just light, but truth. Everyone present saw visions of what would happen if the sites were forced to activate too soon. The cascade of uncontrolled awakenings, the release of powers beyond current human understanding, the inevitable chaos that would follow. Vale's security forces began to retreat, their weapons useless against something that defied physical laws. The drilling platform's crew abandoned their equipment. But the Guardian wasn't finished. Its liquid metal form flowed outward, creating a permanent barrier around the farm's perimeter. The message was clear. This site would now actively defend itself against unauthorized intrusion. "The network is alive," Mary Whitehawk said in wonder. "Not just activated but aware, responding to threats, adapting its defenses." Dr. Carter's phone buzzed. "Reports coming in from other sites," she announced. "Similar Guardians appearing worldwide. The entire network is implementing automated protection protocols." Vale's voice came again, smaller now. "You don't understand what you're